Sarah Chen's fingers danced across her keyboard in a familiar rhythm, her dark eyes focused intently on the multiple monitors before her. The Seattle skyline provided a dramatic backdrop through the floor-to-ceiling windows of TechVision's 42nd floor office. At 32, she was the youngest lead developer in the company's history, known for her innovative approaches to artificial intelligence and machine learning. Her desk, unlike the chaotic workspaces around her, maintained a minimalist aesthetic: a small potted succulent, a framed photo of her parents back in San Francisco, and a coffee mug bearing the words "code" like a girl that Jessica had given her for her last birthday. The thought of Jessica brought a smile to her face. Their friendship had been her anchor since their undergraduate days at MIT. "Hey, superstar!" Mike Thompson's voice carried across the open office space as he approached her desk. His marketing department lanyard swung with each confident stride. Sarah's heart did that familiar little flutter it had done for the past 5 years whenever she saw him. With his perfect jawline and perpetually tousled brown hair, he looked like he'd walked straight out of a J. Crew catalog. Working through lunch again, he perched on the edge of her desk, careful not to disturb her precisely arranged workspace. "You know, most people actually take their lunch breaks," says the guy who spent 3 consecutive weekends here working on the Q4 presentation. Sarah teased, saving her work before turning to face him. Their relationship had begun at one of those weekend sessions when they'd found themselves the only 2 souls in the office at 9 p.m. on a Saturday. Their love story had been the stuff of office legend, the brilliant programmer and the charming marketing executive, proving that opposites really did attract. Jessica had been their biggest cheerleader, helping plan their dates and listening to Sarah's endless analysis of every milestone in their relationship. But lately, something had felt off. Mike's usual warmth seemed forced, his kisses distracted. Sarah had attributed it to stress from the upcoming product launch, but a nagging voice in her head suggested otherwise. She'd dismissed it as paranoia, the same way she'd dismissed the slight tension in Jessica's smile when they'd last had their weekly coffee date. The truth revealed itself on a rainy Tuesday morning. Sarah had arrived early, hoping to fix a bug before the daily stand-up meeting. The office was nearly empty, the skeleton crew of early arrivals focused on their own tasks. As she passed the small conference room, she heard familiar voices engaged in what seemed to be an intense discussion. "We need to tell her, Mike. It's been 6 months. She deserves to know." Sarah froze. Jessica's voice, usually so confident, sounded strained. "I know, Jess. I don't want to hurt her. She's been so supportive of my career, of everything. And I've been her best friend since college. Do you think this is easy for me?" The world tilted on its axis as Sarah stood there, her hand gripping the wall for support. The pieces clicked into place with devastating clarity: the cancelled plans, the awkward group lunches, the way they both seemed to avoid eye contact during meetings. She must have made a sound, because suddenly the conference room door opened. Jessica stood there, her perfectly styled blonde hair framing a face drained of color. Behind her, Mike looked like he might be sick. Jessica's voice cracked. "We were just about to come find you." The following hours passed in a blur. Words like "didn't mean to hurt you" and "it just happened" washed over her like waves of static. The engagement ring Mike had already bought for Jessica felt like a physical blow. 5 years of her life and 15 years of friendship reduced to a cliché office scandal. The worst part wasn't the betrayal, it was having to maintain professionalism in an office where everyone knew. The pitying glances from colleagues, the awkward silences in the elevator, the way people scurried away when all 3 of them ended up in the same space. But Sarah threw herself into her work, staying late into the night, finding solace in the predictability of code. It was during one of these late-night sessions that Alexander Wright first noticed her. The CEO of TechVision wasn't known for his personal interactions with employees, preferring to delegate through layers of management. But something about the determination radiating from Sarah's hunched shoulders caught his attention. He'd been reviewing project proposals when her name had come up repeatedly in discussions about innovative AI development. Her latest project, an algorithm for developing emotional intelligence in AI interfaces, had particularly intrigued him. Now, watching her work with singular focus despite her personal turmoil, he saw something beyond technical brilliance. "MS. Chen," his deep voice cut through the empty office. "I've been reading your proposal on Project Empathy." Sarah startled, nearly knocking over her cold coffee. Alexander Wright cut an impressive figure in his tailored suit, his salt and pepper hair and steel grey eyes giving him an air of distinguished authority. At 45, he'd built tech vision from a startup to a major player in the tech industry. "I believe you might be onto something revolutionary," he continued, pulling up a chair. "Would you walk me through your vision for this project?" For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt something other than pain, a spark of excitement, as she began explaining her ideas. She didn't notice the way Alexander's eyes lingered on her animated expressions, or how his professional interest carried an undertone of something more personal. As they talked late into the night, neither realized that this conversation would change both their lives in ways they couldn't imagine. Sometimes, Sarah would later reflect, the worst betrayals lead us exactly where we need to be. Lines of code scrolled across Sarah's monitors as her fingers flew over the keyboard, her mind deep in the complex architecture of Project Empathy. The office hummed with the quiet energy of early morning, but she'd been here for hours already. Sleep had become an afterthought in the weeks following the betrayal, replaced by an almost obsessive drive to perfect her AI's emotional recognition algorithms. "The system needs to understand not just what people say, but what they mean," she muttered to herself, adjusting variables in her code. The AI she was developing went beyond simple pattern recognition. It could detect subtle variations in tone, analyze contextual clues, and respond with unprecedented emotional intelligence. Her dedication was paying off. The initial test results showed promise that exceeded even her optimistic projections. The AI wasn't just responding to emotional cues, it was learning to anticipate them, to understand the complex web of human relationships and reactions that made up everyday interactions. "You're going to burn yourself out if you keep this schedule," Alexander's voice carried across the empty office. He'd developed a habit of checking on her during these early morning sessions, always armed with fresh coffee and insights that challenged her thinking. Sarah looked up, managing a tired smile. "I'm close to a breakthrough. The emotional mapping framework is finally stabilizing." Alexander set a coffee cup on her desk and pulled up his usual chair. Over the past few weeks, these early morning discussions had become something of a ritual. What started as formal project reviews had evolved into wide-ranging conversations about technology, innovation, and their shared vision for the future of AI. "Show me," he said, leaning in to study her screens. Sarah was struck, as she often was lately, by his presence, the subtle scent of his cologne, the intensity in his grey eyes as he focused on her work. There was something compelling about a man who could grasp the complexity of her ideas and build upon them. Their professional relationship flourished in these quiet morning hours. Alexander wasn't just a mentor, he became a true collaborator, offering perspectives that pushed her to think beyond conventional boundaries. His business acumen complemented her technical expertise, helping her see the broader implications of her work. The peaceful routine shattered one Tuesday morning when HR called an all-hands meeting. Sarah's stomach dropped as she watched Mike and Jessica step to the front of the conference room, their hands clasped together. The announcement of their engagement echoed through the room like a physical force. "We're so happy to share our joy with our Tech Vision family," Jessica beamed, her diamond ring catching the fluorescent light. The room erupted in congratulations, while Sarah sat frozen, her laptop screen blurring before her eyes. A warm hand pressed against her shoulder. Alexander stood beside her chair, his presence solid and reassuring. Without a word, he guided her out of the conference room and into his private office. "Take all the time you need," he said softly, closing the door to give her privacy. "Your worth isn't diminished by their choices." That moment marked a shift in their dynamic. Alexander's support went beyond professional guidance. He became her strongest advocate, championing Project Empathy to the board and ensuring she had every resource needed to succeed. In the weeks that followed, Sarah noticed subtle changes in their interactions. The way Alexander's hand would linger when passing her documents, the electricity in their accidental touches during late-night coding sessions. Their conversations drifted beyond work, revealing shared passions for classical music and obscure sci-fi novels. During a crucial presentation to potential investors, Sarah felt Alexander's eyes on her as she demonstrated Project Empathy's capabilities. She spoke with confidence, her passion for the work evident in every word. The investors were captivated, but she found herself more aware of Alexander's proud smile than their reactions. "You were brilliant today," he told her afterward, as they celebrated the successful presentation in his office. The city lights sparkled beyond his windows, casting a soft glow across his features. "You've grown so much since we started this project." Sarah felt her breath catch as he stepped closer, ostensibly to refill her champagne glass. "I had an excellent mentor," she replied, trying to ignore the way her pulse quickened at his proximity. "I think we both know I'm more than just your mentor," Sarah Alexander said quietly, his eyes meeting hers with an intensity that made her heart race. The air between them crackled with unspoken possibility. She found herself noticing things she'd tried to ignore: the strength in his hands as he gestured while speaking, the way his smile seemed reserved just for her, the depth of understanding in his eyes when he looked at her. This attraction wasn't born from workplace proximity or rebound emotions, it had grown naturally from mutual respect and genuine connection. One evening, as they worked late reviewing the latest test results, Alexander's hand brushed hers as they reached for the same document. Neither pulled away immediately. The touch lingered, electric and meaningful. "Sarah," he began, his voice carrying an emotion she hadn't heard before. But before he could continue, his phone buzzed with an urgent call from the board. The moment passed, but its impact lingered. Sarah found herself increasingly aware of the tension between them, professional boundaries blurring into something more complex and thrilling. She noticed how Alexander's eyes followed her movements during meetings, how he seemed to find reasons for their paths to cross throughout the day. Their late-night work sessions became charged with unspoken possibilities. Every shared laugh, every thoughtful discussion, every moment of comfortable silence added another layer to their evolving relationship. Sarah realized that somewhere between the lines of code and strategic planning, she'd started to feel something she'd thought impossible after Mike's betrayal: hope for a different kind of love, one built on genuine understanding and mutual growth. Yet neither made a move to cross the line. The stakes were too high, the timing too delicate. Project Empathy was approaching its launch phase, and they both knew that any personal complications could jeopardize everything they'd worked for. So they maintained their professional facade, even as their hearts raced at every accidental touch and their eyes held contact a moment too long in crowded meetings. The tension between them became a sweet torment, building with each passing day. It was present in every shared coffee, every late-night discussion, every proud smile when they achieved another milestone. Sarah found herself falling not for the CEO of Tech Vision, but for the man who believed in her brilliance, even when she doubted herself, the man who had seen her worth when she was at her lowest. The launch day for Project Empathy arrived with unprecedented anticipation in the tech industry. Major news outlets had caught wind of Tech Vision's breakthrough in emotional AI, and the company's stock had been climbing steadily for weeks. Sarah stood in the wings of the conference center stage, watching as rows of journalists, investors, and industry leaders filled the seats. Project Empathy isn't just another chatbot, she heard Alexander telling the board chairman nearby. It's going to revolutionize how technology understands human emotions. It's not just our flagship product, it's the future of AI. The presentation exceeded even the most optimistic expectations. When Sarah demonstrated how the AI could detect subtle emotional cues in real-time conversations and respond with genuine empathy, the audience broke into spontaneous applause. Tech blogs were already calling it the most significant breakthrough in AI development of the decade. As she fielded questions from enthusiastic reporters, Sarah caught a glimpse of Mike and Jessica at the back of the room. For the first time, seeing them together didn't hurt. Instead, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Their betrayal had pushed her to focus on her dreams, to prove her worth not to others, but to herself. The months of immersing herself in work had transformed more than just her career. She'd rediscovered her passion for painting during late-night breaks from coding. She'd reconnected with old friends outside the office, started taking Spanish classes, and even ran her first half marathon. The woman who had once defined herself through others' eyes now stood confidently on her own achievements. But during quiet moments in her new corner office, a perk of becoming Tech Vision's director of AI development, Sarah often reflected on her journey. The pain that had once threatened to break her had instead forged her into someone stronger, someone who understood her own worth. Alexander had been there through it all, his support never wavering. Their relationship had deepened beyond mentor and mentee, beyond CEO and employee, into something neither of them had expected but both treasured. They'd maintained their professional boundaries even as their feelings grew. both understanding that timing was crucial. The product launch party was in full swing when Alexander took the stage one final time. The champagne was flowing, and the mood was celebratory as he tapped his glass for attention. Today marks a milestone not just for tech vision, but for the future of human-computer interaction, he began, his eyes finding Sarah in the crowd. But the true breakthrough isn't just in the code, it's in the vision of someone who understood that technology needs heart to truly serve humanity. He gestured for Sarah to join him on stage. Confused but intrigued, she made her way through the applauding crowd. Sarah Chen didn't just create an AI that understands emotions, Alexander continued, taking her hand as she reached him. She taught me about the courage it takes to trust again, to build something beautiful from life's hardest moments. The room fell silent as Alexander turned to face her fully, still holding her hand. I promised myself I wouldn't blur the lines between personal and professional until Project Empathy launched, he said softly, though his microphone carried his words to the hushed audience. Now that it has, I have an important question to ask, not as your CEO, but as a man who has fallen completely in love with your brilliant mind and beautiful heart. Sarah's breath caught as Alexander dropped to one knee, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. The ring inside was elegant and unique as sapphire surrounded by diamonds, as multifaceted as their relationship. You've transformed not just this company, but my entire world. Sarah Chen, will you marry me? The tears in Sarah's eyes reflected the stage lights as she nodded, her voice strong and clear as she said, "Yes." The applause that erupted was deafening, but Sarah barely heard it. In that moment she understood that sometimes the worst betrayals lead to the best beginnings, and that real love doesn't diminish who you are, it helps you become who you were always meant to be. The Seattle Four Seasons bustled with wedding preparations as Sarah reviewed final details with her wedding planner. But the grand ballroom was being transformed into an elegant fusion of modern technology and timeless romance. Crystal chandeliers programmed to shift colors subtly throughout the evening, interactive LED flower arrangements that responded to movement, and sophisticated AI-driven ambient music that would adapt to the crowd's energy. Everything should reflect both of you, Sarah's mother had said, and they'd taken that advice to heart. The wedding would be a celebration of their shared passion for innovation while honoring traditional elements that spoke to their family's heritage. Sarah's traditional Chinese qipao for the tea ceremony would be followed by a modern white gown for the Western ceremony, while Alexander would complement both in his perfectly tailored tuxedo. News of their engagement had created quite a stir in Seattle's tech community. The story of the brilliant developer who found love with her CEO after Heartbreak had caught the public's imagination. Several magazines had requested exclusive coverage of the wedding, all of which they'd politely declined. This day would be intimate, shared only with those who had truly supported their journey. Mike and Jessica received their wedding invitations along with the rest of the TechVision staff. The elegant cards, featuring an AI-generated design based on Sarah and Alexander's actual love story, landed on their desks like a gentle reminder of what they'd lost. Jessica found herself lingering in front of the company's wall of achievements, where a large photo showed Sarah accepting an innovation award for Project Empathy. The woman in the picture radiated confidence and joy, a far cry from the broken friend she'd left behind. Mike, passing by the same photo later, felt a hollow ache as he remembered how he'd once dismissed Sarah's obsession with AI development. She's speaking at the World Tech Summit next month, they overheard someone say. Alexander and she are being called the power couple of ethical AI development. The wedding day dawned clear and bright, the Seattle skyline crisp against the autumn sky. The Four Seasons ballroom had been transformed into a sophisticated wonderland where technology and romance intertwined seamlessly. Guests gasped as they entered through an archway of responsive lights that created subtle patterns matching their movements. Sarah stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows, the city spread out below her. Her white gown, a masterpiece of subtle elegance, caught the light as she turned to face Alexander at the altar. Their vows, personal and profound, spoke of transformation, of finding strength in vulnerability, and of love that grew from mutual respect and understanding. "You saw me," Sarah said, her voice clear and strong, "not just for who I was, but for who I could become. You believed in my dreams when they were just lines of code, and you helped me believe in love again when I thought it was just an algorithm I'd never crack." Alexander's voice carried emotion as he responded, You transformed my world with your brilliance and your heart. You showed me that true innovation comes from understanding not just how things work, but how people feel. You are my partner in every sense of the word, and I promise to spend my life worthy of the trust you've placed in me." As they sealed their vows with a kiss, the room's ambient lighting shifted to a warm golden glow, and the AI-driven music swelled perfectly. The moment was captured not just by photographers, but by the very technology they'd helped pioneer their love story, literally written in code and light. At the reception, Mike and Jessica watched from their table as Sarah and Alexander shared their first dance. The couple moved together with natural grace, their happiness palpable. Something about seeing them together the way they functioned as true equals, the genuine respect in their interactions made their own relationship feel suddenly shallow in comparison. But this day wasn't about old wounds or regrets. It was about new beginnings, about how sometimes life's greatest heartbreaks lead us to our greatest joys. As Sarah and Alexander moved among their guests, their intertwined fingers never separating for long, they embodied a truth about love that their AI could now understand, that real connection isn't just about attraction or convenience, but about growing together, supporting each other's dreams, and building something greater than themselves. The evening ended with a spectacular display of synchronized drones forming constellations above the city, spelling out their initials against the night sky. Sarah and Alexander stood together, watching the lights dance above Seattle, their future as bright as the stars above them.